From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. And now, here they are, Jim and Rich.
Even John's out of practice. He had to go back and look and go, oh, wait a minute, I got to turn this on here, too.
In the words of ravishing Rick Rude, cut the music.
It's right. It's right.
You know,
Leon and Massaro back again, like it or not. You thought you were rid of us, but no, we keep coming back.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? It's my pleasure to be here with the Hall of Famer, John DeVita, and the voice of the Ridgewood Rebels, Jim Leon.
Man,
I'll tell you.
What do you?
I've been missing.
He's looking for something. John,
I've been missing
I'm
this.
you.
I've been missing this place for the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Is that it?
I have.
You've had too much to say?
I've had too much to say, and only Sports Jimmy to say it to.
Hey, I've got a new radio station for Sports Jimmy.
What is? Don't tell me. Is it that new one, the new FM one?
No. He's gonna have to. He's gonna have to go out of town for this one. He's going to have to go. He's going to have to go to St. Louis and listen to 590 Man Radio.
Man Radio?
Man Radio.
Let's see. Well,
you've got a show on there in the morning with two guys that call themselves the Alpha Males.
Ooh.
One of them on his bio, one of the things he does is he's a fitness trainer, and he's posed without his shirt. He's very manly.
Hey.
And there's a guy in the evening whose show is called Nick's Nuts.
Oh, man.
Yar.
What were you doing in St. Louis?
I heard about this. I looked up, somebody told me about this, and I went to the website.
I think we should actually just start a new station called WMBS, Meatball Sports.
Oh, there you go.
So,
have to see. Hey, we're gonna have to look and see if the call letters are available. That might be a good idea.
Definitely. I think Jim has been angling to get on this show now that he knows that he only would have to perform in front of you, me, and John instead of a whole room full of people like we had at Fanny and Schmoes. But
well,
what the heck are we going to talk about today, James?
I don't know. What do you want to talk about, Rich? Maybe this is going to be our show where we talk about nothing for an hour and we send it off to the Broadcast Hall of Fame.
I know what I was going to ask you. The other day at coffee, Bill Papich was, and none of us are soccer fans, but he brought up an interesting thing, and I talked to Elias over at the library, who is a soccer fan, but he was telling me that with this World Cup coming up in Brazil, that they have a stadium that is so remote. It's in the Amazon, near the Amazon. It's in, I guess they cut out a space in the jungle, it almost sounds like. And you can only get in by, I guess, helicopter or some kind of air route. And he said, you know what, there are just, he said there's like masses of mosquitoes. He says, the way he explained it, the boas are still hanging off the trees ready to drop down on you. I mean, so you can't get in by foot. But he said that the people who live in this area say there are 2 seasons. There are humid and HE double hockey sticks. And so I guess the players, the teams who are prospectively going to play at the stadium, are practicing in winter clothes and whatnot to get used to the oppressive heat. But I haven't been able to find anybody that could that's confirming this or knows what the stadium is.
I have no idea about that. I just know that the issue was that there was some stadium that, as the World Cup opens, the stadium isn't going to be ready, isn't going to be completed.
Well, is that I'm getting different stories because I heard that now is Brazil hosting the Summer Olympics coming up in 2 years?
Yes, and there's been some talk that I've read about actually moving it.
Okay, because I had heard that they might be talking about moving it back to London because London obviously already has the facilities because I think they must have done the last Summer Olympics. Right. So I did hear that, but they obviously are having some problems getting. Now the other thing I heard is that Qatar, down the road, I don't know what year it would have been, and this is the World Cup again. Qatar was going to host the World Cup, and now they're thinking about pulling the plug on that future event because there's been some what would you say human geez, they're bringing in people to work on the stadiums, and they're working under very poor conditions. So there's been some human rights issues, I guess, and that where there's been some stoppage of work because in Qatar, everybody's basically rich, and the population is very small. So they're importing the workforce, but now they're working them like dogs, I guess. And there's been some issues, so that may go on hold, or they may take it away from them. Pretty soon, with all these issues, they may have to do one of these things on Mars or the moon or something, because no place in the world will be immune from issues.
I think the World Cup will be one of the sites for the World Cup, if they have that, is going to be Ridgewood.
Hey, that would be a good venue. You think you could make that one, Jim?
Yeah, let's work on that. Let's start the campaign about that.
I still we had there's a guy who comes into Mariano's in the morning, Steve, and he's Greek, and he's been in this country for years, but he's very European, and we started talking soccer with us one day. And we said, you know what, Steve, soccer is never going to take hold in this country. And he's like, oh, but it's a big Bob. He's giving us the whole story. And I said, you know what, Steve, any sport where you don't get knocked down in this country is not going to go, okay? I mean, we like to see people get knocked down. We like hockey, we like football, baseball, you got the knockdown pitch, the takeout slide, basketball, they get rough under the boards. Soccer's not going. That's all I could say. I went to a boys' game one year with Jim Matthews, and he said, look, there's contact here. And I'm like, what contact? Well, a guy took another guy out. I guess it would be with a tackle. They use their legs a little bit. He goes, look at that contact. I go, Jim, that's not contact. I go, you think that's have you ever seen a football game? That isn't contact compared to football. Oh, yeah, that's contact. So Jimmy Sunshine was trying to give me the good news.
I don't think the term slobberknocker has ever been used in
not in soccer.
Not in soccer.
And John just reminded me that this show is going to be on at 7:30 in the morning, and one of the people that's in the school at that time is possibly going to be Rob St. John. So let's hope Rob isn't listening to this.
So you're going to be in trouble again.
Yeah. Well, what else is new? Let's talk about something else we can get in trouble on. I could get in trouble on. How do you?
So I'm thinking hockey season's going to be over Wednesday night. Did you watch the game at all last night?
Why, did the Kings win again?
Yep.
So it's going to be okay. So the Rangers are pretty much going to be done.
I think it's pretty much done.
Yeah. What is your? I didn't see the game. I have not. I don't remember the Hawks playing the Rangers this year. I know they did, but I didn't see the game.
I didn't.
What was your take on the Rangers?
Sluggish.
Oh, sluggish.
Sluggish. I that was kind of my take. I mean, I don't know if the first two games, I mean, especially the second game. Second game was really good. That double overtime game, that was a really good game. I don't know if it was just a case of not having enough in the tank last night.
Well, I don't know. Here, the thing I'm thinking as you're saying that is the Kings and the Hawks. Those two teams for sure can go four lines on you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether the Rangers can do that, I don't know. And the problem may be that with the four sets of playoff rounds, and then the first two games in this playoff series going into overtime, then double overtime, and then you have coast-to-coast travel thrown in. If the Rangers don't go those four lines deep, they may be just hitting the wall, and the Kings, who can go four lines effectively, maybe just running them into the ground. So that might be why you're seeing a little sluggishness. Now I'm guessing at that because maybe the Rangers do go four lines deep. I don't know, but that would be a guess.
I don't know. I haven't followed them enough to know this year, but it just seemed kind of sluggish. And I think right now, the Kings have that killer instinct where the foot is on the throat.
Well, they're ready to seal the deal,
and they're ready to close the deal out.
Yeah, I think
they
so.
had a tough series with the Hawks.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, and
they've had a bunch of tough series.
They've had.
This is like almost a breather.
This is like a breather here for them.
Yeah. I have to say, what little I did see, I'm not trying to put the East down, but everybody says the West is a stronger conference, and from what little
From what
bit
I've seen,
I would
they're
say
right.
It's true.
What I've seen, they're right.
Yeah,
I think that's exactly the case.
no doubt about it. You know, we were talking about. I guess I mentioned hitting the wall. I saw an interesting article the other day, and it was about the Sox and Jose Abreu, and Abreu apparently had been in a little bit of a slump, and they were calling for him to get things moving because the Sox have a big series with Detroit, and I said the little bit I glanced at the paper this morning, I see that the writers were satisfied. I think the Sox won 6-5, and Abreu must have had a decent game because his name was mentioned, but I'm thinking, if it was easy that this guy could just call on himself to say, okay, Jose, we're going to get it going right now because the Tigers are coming to town, you know what? Then everybody would be doing that. I mean, these writers are simpletons, Jim.
Yeah.
They are really simpletons. I have to say that.
18 home runs for him this year. You know, it was funny. The other day I was listening to, on the weekend, I was out and I had the radio on and I was listening to the score. And one of the weekend hosts, who normally is a producer of the show, got himself. I hope he was speaking tongue-in-cheek, but he latched on to an analytic.
Oh, okay.
Relating to Abreu.
Okay.
Called isolated power.
Okay.
And essentially what he's saying is, I think he quoted it wrong, but he said that it's slugging percentage less batting average.
That's okay.
Isolated.
I have to think about that.
I don't think that's correct. But based on the subject, or based on the calculation that he made on this, he said that the only person that ever had a greater isolated power rating was Babe Ruth. So therefore, Jose Abreu is going to be the greatest ball player ever. And this is on the basis of 202 at-bats.
Boy, I hope he's saying that tongue-in-cheek.
I hope he is, too. I think his partner kind of caught him on that and let him have it, because he says all Jose Abreu really ever does is hits a home run or gets a double. So, of course, his isolated power is going to be higher if you're going to treat it that way.
Yeah, I'm not for or how would you say it? I'm not trying to make a case for or against Abreu, since that's the guy we're talking about. But I'd say, he's done well so far. I still think the big test for him will be the length of the season, because what did you tell me in Cuba? I think you gave me the number of games that he was normally playing.
66 games or something like that was the most.
And I found it interesting when I saw the article in the paper that I had seen a couple days ago, that they felt that he was slumping a little bit, although he just came off the DL, so I don't know how that could be. But at any rate, I did find it interesting that he went through the exhibition season. I'm sure he played most of the games there because they wanted to see what he would do. So, maybe you're talking 30 or 40 games there, and he's probably played, let's just say he was on the DL, so let's say he's played maybe 30 or so games with the Sox. So it could be at the point where if you're going to hit the wall, that point could come fairly quickly. So I would just say,
Abreu's played in 50 ball games.
50 ball games. So you
last night was his 51st.
So if he hit the wall, I don't think that would be unusual. But I hope that guy was speaking tongue in cheek.
Well, especially when his partner offered him a comparison that probably what the person that everyone feels the greatest home run hitter ever, Henry Aaron, who's still viewed by many as the home run champion, his isolated power was 250.
And isolated power was...
what he was saying was batting average less slugging.
I don't know where...
Or slugging less batting average, rather.
Okay. I don't know. Some of these stats really is we were talking about this again at coffee the other day, because I tell everybody, Jim is not my partner is not buying into these stats, but he is keeping himself up on these stats. or these different
one.
acronyms that they turn into statistics.
Bob,
So, and I give him a lot of credit for that. But the more I'm glad that he has some understanding of it, because when he explains these things to me, and I'm thinking, man, it seems to me like they're just statistics for the sake of having a statistic.
I think that's what it is. Sometimes I think it's just a number for the sake of having a number.
Yeah.
Paralysis by analysis?
Well,
analysis by paralysis, whatever you want to call it.
Jim, that's when when I look at the game of baseball today, and I'm a baseball fan. If you ask me, what's the national pastime, I'm still a guy who would say baseball. I'm not going to say football. I'm not going to say anything else. I love hockey these days because I really like what's happening there. But you know what? Baseball, in my mind, is still our national pastime. I love the game because the game is never over, actually, until the last man is out, which none of these other sports can say. It's a great game. It's one that I don't think they should try to speed up. I think they should not have instant replays to slow it down more. But I think it's a game where you go out on a nice afternoon or evening. You sit there, you enjoy yourself for 3.5 hours.
Sometimes 4.
But that's what you're there for, to enjoy the game. I don't see, hey, let's go and spend $150 and speed the damn the game up and make it an hour and a half. No, I'm spending $150. I want to be there for a while. But it's still our game. But you know what? It has no pizzazz, and
it's a very cerebral game.
Well, it always was cerebral, but you had good characters and good, exciting players.
It's a very cerebral game, and in this, the way the society seems to be now, a cerebral event is lost.
Yeah,
because you're not thinking about what's going to happen down the line, what the strategy is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
and the fact that you got a bunch of guys who are managing from a chart. And in this situation, I got to do this. This situation, I got to do that. I got to bring him in to do this. I got to bring him in to do that.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. Somebody was telling me the other day they were watching a game. Might have been the Sox, or Sale. I think went through. It might have been Sale. Went through like 7 innings and was really.
It was about a 2.5. I think the game he pitched was less than 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I mean, and he was breezing, and all of a sudden, Ventura decided, well, we got to go with the book. We're taking Sale out after 7. Then they brought the 8th inning guy in, and they proceeded to. I think they actually blew that game, and I think it was the bullpen that blew it because Sale, up to that point, had not been really had been dominating. I forget who they were playing. But he had been he had dominated. His pitching performance was excellent, and they took him out after 7. Came in, the bullpen came in, and they blew it. Well, the same thing happened with the Cubs the other day. I guess last Friday was it when
Friday? Who's the closer? Rondon came in with a 3-run lead, tied the ball game up, and they had to win it in extra innings.
So yeah, but they had a 3-zip game going.
Strop blew the game on Sunday.
Okay.
In fact, it was kind of funny. I got a kick out of this. I saw one of my favorite writers, the king of the cheap shots, Steve Rosenblum, pulled off an article yesterday, and I got a good kick out of it. His Rosenblog from the Tribune yesterday. Thank goodness the Cubs got back to being the Cubs. I have no idea what they were doing, winning a season high 5 games in a row, but they had to stop that. And on Sunday, mercifully, they did. They failed to hit in the clutch. They blew a lead late on a walk, hit by pitch, single, sacrifice fly, and ta-da, wild pitch. Baseball like it ought to be. Cubs baseball like it ought to be anyway.
You better believe it.
Except that it wasn't last week. The Cubs took 3 from the Mets and 2 from the Marlins, who are a joke but playing well when they came into Wrigley Field. All of a sudden, the Cubs are trying to complete a perfect homestand. How stupid is that? The last time the Cubs swept the homestand of 6 or more games, was 2008. That Cub team was trying to win 100 games. This one should be trying to lose that many. Wake up, people. The Cubs tried to get back to their DNA during this homestand. They blew a 3-run lead in the ninth inning Friday, for instance, but they came back to win it on an Anthony Rizzo home run, walk-off home run. Stop it already. I mean, the Cubs had won so much last week they had lost the designation of the worst record in baseball. That won't do. That's not acceptable. They can't attempt to improve without costing themselves the top draft pick next year. Major League Baseball just completed its amateur draft. That's what the Cubs live for. That's Theo Epstein's World Series. That will be the lifeblood of the threat that the Cubs will win something before the end of these days. But this can't happen if they keep winning. That goes for this season and next. Look, they were a joke last season, but not a big enough joke because they still had only the 4th pick in the draft, in this year's draft, and missed out on the top 3 pitchers. Here's the rule, idiot Cubs. The more wins, the worse the draft spot. So stop it right now.
Well, you know what that proves to me, Jim? It proves that, I guess these writers have a method to their madness, because I know you've met Steve Rosenblum, and I actually had the pleasure to meet Steve Rosenblum a couple times. As nice and polite a man as you would want to ever meet.
He really is.
But he when you read his column, you're ready to strangle him. But he's a nice man.
He's the king of the cheap shots.
Yeah.
I got on him one time. When he wrote an article about sports writers who go on who make their living going on to talk radio.
Okay.
And how they're, damaging. I think it was something about damaging the journalistic profession. And I told him, I wrote him, and I said, for somebody who's getting a good chunk of their income from sports radio, you got a lot of nerve. I put a couple other adjectives in there about talking like that, and I got a response back that just said, Jim, feeling the love, Rosie.
There you go. There you go.
But he had a couple other things here, and one of them is another. I got to find out what this one is here. I got to find out what this stat is. He says there's a few things that matter on the field this season. Rizzo. After last season's misery, the first baseman has responded with 12 home runs, 33 RBIs, an on-base percentage of .403, and an OPS of .894. He's not a finished product, but this looks like the guy we first saw. Starlin Castro. He's never going to walk, and he's going to strike out 130 times. Deal with it. He's back to ripping the ball with a .434 slugging percentage and .745 OPS. Jeff Samardzija and Jason Hammel, specifically their trade value. Samardzija's 2.54 ERA is 7th best in the National League. Hammel's 2.53 is 6th best. Samardzija's 3.03 fielder independent pitching. Do you know what that one is?
No.
I got to find out what that one is. It's the best of his careers. Hammel's 2.89 is also the best of his career. Samardzija's 1.29 whip. You know what whip is.
Whip?
Walk plus
I think,
hits. Walk plus
really kinky people are into that whip.
Well, besides that.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Walks plus hits.
Walks plus hits.
Divided by
sorry.
innings pitched.
That's not the whips I was thinking of. But
no,
okay.
but it's spelled the same way.
All right.
Hammel's is less than 1.
Wow. Why?
Samardzija is pushing 30. Hammel is past it. Someday Epstein will be looking to acquire these kind of pitchers in July. This is not that July. Check back in 2019.
Geez, sorry, Rosie. I got to wake up from my nap now.
Yeah.
After, that scintillating.
Yeah. Maybe Travis Wood and Mike Olt. Wood's ERA soared over 5, even worse than Edwin Jackson. But the lefties always get more and longer looks. Olt's 9 home runs are second to Rizzo, and his 33 RBIs are third behind Rizzo and Castro, but his batting average, on-base percentage, and slugging percentage are woeful. And maybe Chris Bryant and Javier Baez, but no one is sure whether either or both will show up this season. The rest of the roster, appears to be jock itch.
Hey, I have to ask you this now. You guys, John, do you follow horse racing at all? Why is California Chrome's owners now apologizing? What are they apologizing for?
What he said on Saturday, and I heard it, and I said on a certain extent he has a point, but on the other hand, it was just nothing more than sour grapes, a sore loser. The horse that ran in the Belmont did not run in either of the other 2 races.
And that's the horse that won?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he did not run in either of the other 2 races. And that was his complaint. Now, he also said the other issue was that the horse that won the Belmont was sick for the Travers. So he really did not have enough points to even qualify to be an entry in the Derby.
In the Derby or
in the Kentucky Derby. He did not have enough points at that point to be considered to be an entry.
Okay.
So, I don't know what the guy was complaining about. The other issue is, too, that if you only allow horses in the Belmont that ran in the Derby and the Preakness, you know how many horses would have run in the Belmont? 3.
Yeah, I always thought that and I'm not a big horse racing fan, or I like the sport, but I'm not that well versed on it. But I always thought that the Belmont had a little bit bigger field. I didn't know, or a different field. Let's put it that way.
It's a different field because it's a longer race. It's a mile and a half.
Right.
And there's not too many mile and a half.
No.
That's not a common distance.
No, that's a long way for the. That's a longer track or distance around the track than most. I was going to say, interesting that he should. I guess he should apologize. I'm not a big one on all these apologize,
and
but
he did. He did.
The thing that I jumped into my mind when you explained the situation is, now this is the same horse though, that they've sort of bent the rules to let California Chrome in the race because the New York rules. Were stating that he was not eligible for the race because there was something he was taking.
They were not. They had to rule on the breathing strip they put on him.
Right. So and normally
I wear a breathing strip at night only because I snore.
They don't allow the breathing strip.
Right.
So actually, the rules were sort of bent for California Chrome to actually be in the race. I mean, there was a big outcry for him to be in the race and try to win the Triple Crown.
Because it's been 36 years.
Let's put it this way. If the owner, and I'm not knocking the owner per se, I know he's probably frustrated. He wanted that Triple Crown. But if his complaint is, okay, you have a horse in the race that didn't compete in the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown, I suppose I hear what he's saying. But at the same time, you're sitting there complaining when they actually sort of bent the rules so your horse could participate at all.
Yeah.
So there's
not
much to complain about.
And California Chrome got nicked, got whacked in the leg coming out of the gate by another horse. Mm-hmm. Maybe that affected him.
Let me ask you this, Jim.
And the other thing too was who was the jockey? Espinoza.
Mm-hmm.
They interviewed him after the race, and his comment was, I asked for him at about, he says, I could tell at about half a mile he didn't have it today.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I tried to get him to open up, and he said, it just wasn't happening today.
Let me ask you this, because you've been made more than one wager on a race in your life.
2 or 3.
I remember seeing something in the paper prior to the race about some question about how do they state it? California Chrome was in the number 2 position, and they said they didn't think that would hurt him. But why would number 2 not be a good position to be in, or is there no difference in where he was at?
You know what I mean? I think it would depend on. I think it would depend on the size of the field,
Mm-hmm.
because if you're in the number 2, if you're close to the rail, you run the risk, especially with a smaller field, of everybody. Obviously, when they come out of the gate, they're going to head to the rail because what shortest distance around.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to get there, and horses can have a problem because then they'll get boxed in, and if they can't move to the outside, they're stuck.
Okay,
they're stuck.
Okay.
I think it was it the Derby or the Preakness where he was starting on one of the inside posts, and especially with the Derby, starting on the inside post can be a killer. Because the Derby is generally 20, 21 horses. That's like a frickin' cavalry charge. Mm-hmm. I said frickin', John, just make sure. Okay, all right. I just wanted you to know that.
I just talked to Divine Savior.
Okay, thank you. That's like a cavalry charge. So all of a sudden, everybody's coming across, and those on the inside post have a tendency to get
get caught up in the crowd.
Get caught up in the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
But one of those races, California Chrome, it might have been the Preakness. He saw his opening and he took off.
Okay.
He found, Espinoza asked for speed and the horse took off right away.
Now, you know what amazed me? When he won the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown, and they started talking about him possibly, possibly taking the whole thing. I thought, and obviously I'm wrong, but the last time the Triple Crown was won was 1978, so that's 36 years ago. I thought, man, I thought somebody won it more recently.
No.
But then, who was the last Triple Crown? 78 was. I'm not sure who that would have been. Affirmed. Okay.
I think that was affirmed.
Now, was his big rival Aladar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Aladar actually was put away because
Yeah.
Aladar was a
filly.
female. Filly. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I hear music. Either that or the voices in my head are telling me to shut up for a minute.
Isn't that old Beach Boys song? I hear
Music. We'll take a break.
You are listening to Armchair Experts on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center. And now, back to Jim and Rich and Armchair Experts.
And we are back. Getting back onto the horse racing, actually, the horse that I probably would have gotten on if I went to if I would have bet on Saturday, was the horse that finished second in the Derby to California Chrome, Wicked Strong, because I thought the way he was charging at the end, the way he was coming up at the end, I thought he would be great for a long distance.
Okay.
And it turned out actually California Chrome and Wicked Strong dead heated for 4th.
Oh, okay.
So
Who was the winner?
Tonalist.
Okay.
Nice payoff too. Tonalist went off at a little past 9-1, and your second and third place horses were both way past 20-1.
Now,
That made for that. Boy, that would have made for that trifecta with the trifecta with 11, 8, and 1. That combination paid $6,781 on a $2 bet.
So now in this last 36 years, California Chrome joins Big Brown. I know had 2 of the legs that he won.
Here's
who was the other? Who was that little horse?
well,
Jim,
yeah.
Jim,
Here's the other Triple Crown near misses. What happened in the Belmont?
Okay.
We've got a whole list of them here. 2012, I'll Have Another got scratched the day before with tendonitis in the leg. I don't remember that one.
I don't remember that at
Big
all.
Brown in 2008 pulled up before the finish and finished 9th. Smarty Jones.
I love that horse.
I love that horse too. I love that horse. Smarty Jones. I had a nice trifecta that day with Smarty Jones in it, and I was hoping I had boxed a number of horses. You know what boxing means?
No.
Okay, you have a number of horses that you pick, and it's whatever combination. They can finish in any order. I had about a $700 and some odd trifecta on that one.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
No wonder you love the horse.
I like that horse. Well,
it was
only
a horse.
It was only because there was a long shot that won, and I think another one that maybe finished 3rd. Funny Side was another one.
Oh, Funny Side. Okay.
War Emblem.
War Emblem. What year was that?
2002.
Man, these are all pretty recent.
Yeah. Charismatic fractured his leg during the race, pulled up afterwards.
Oh man.
Real Quiet in 1998. Silver Charm in 1997. Sunday Silence.
Well, I didn't realize
Sunday
there were
Silence
so many
finished.
that were,
there were
were
some
close.
really, you figure some great ones. These last 3, Real Quiet, Silver Charm, and Sunday Silence, all finished 2nd. Alashiba in 87 finished 4th. Pleasant Colony, I don't remember that one. Spectacular Bid, 1979. I remember that one.
I know that name. Jim,
and let's see, and that was 1979. Prior to that, Canyon Arrow. Pass catcher beat him.
that one.
Pass catcher beat him.
Now, Jim, you know what? I know you weren't referring to boxing in these terms, but speaking of boxing, and John, do you like boxing at all?
I'll watch it occasionally.
Okay. I was going to say, can you name? Now, I'll eliminate the Klitschko's because I don't think they even.
A heavyweight? No.
Can you
Other
name
than
one heavyweight boxer
No.
in the world today?
no. Other than the Klitschko's, no.
No. Man, I tell you, there's a sport that's really, and you know what? The sport that sort of, how would you say it? That sort of elbowed it to the side is that, what do they call it? Mixed martial arts, is it? Or whatever it is? That is the most boring stuff I've ever seen in my life. Now, don't give your description
No,
of what
okay,
it's like, all right?
I'm not
because
gonna-
we want to stay on the air
No,
here, Jim.
and John-
why am I the one that
all of a
has
sudden
to be
telling-
cautioning you?
All of a sudden, I was about to say it, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does, and it does look like it.
Yeah. My gosh.
And I believe it was Bert Sugar
Bert Sugar made that comment?
made that comment one
You
time.
got away with it.
Well, Bert Sugar is old.
You know, I was watching YouTube the other day, and I decided, remember when Dusty Rhodes came to the WWF?
Yeah.
And he had, they actually made a song for him called the American Dream, which was his nickname. So I watched the YouTube video. Man, I love that. I love that song. And Dusty Rhodes, you know what? When you look at a guy like Dusty Rhodes, and you see how successful he became in that sport, but you look at the man, just look at him, you say, yeah, man, if he could make it,
I could do it.
no, I'm not saying in that sport, but I'm just saying in a general sense, if a guy like that could make it in a sport where, you know, it's if you have a great body, it's better, or if you're a pretty boy, if you have the face, he's got none of that, and he was a big star. So that means, you know, whatever field you're in, you could make it, man. I mean, what? Because you know what? I'm thinking that the man persevered to the point where he, you know, shot up there into the stratosphere in the wrestling world. So
I talk about guys who made it, and some that you know I was surprised to still find wrestling. I saw some article recently about, if you remember, Abdullah the Butcher.
sure,
He's
Abdullah.
72. He's still wrestling.
Oh, he's still wrestling.
Yeah,
I'm surprised he's alive. He was a big man.
yeah, and he is actually being sued by someone because, you know, one of the things with Abdullah is
He had that thing that he used.
yeah, and he cut, you know, would
Yeah.
cut himself and cut people.
Sure.
Well, apparently the man has hepatitis.
Uh-oh. No, that's not good.
Yeah. So
So I guess you would get sued.
yeah, he's gotten sued. Another one that was surprising, and I should have grabbed the flyer when I saw it. I didn't think about it. We Sunday night we went out and had ice cream in Woodridge at a TCBY, and I saw a flyer there for a wrestling show that's coming out in that area, and I can't remember where, but sometime in July.
Well,
So-
the,
You know who the headliner is?
I don't know.
Sting.
Sting. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I'll tell you what. I think that wrestling. I mean, obviously there are drugs in wrestling, so I'm not going there. But it's sort of like a drug in itself because you get hooked on the, I guess, the vibe of the crowd. It doesn't matter if you're a heel or you're a pretty boy. You know, just that whole buzz that you get, especially if
yeah.
you're a headliner.
Oh yeah.
You know, boy, I'll tell you, I remember, though, back before, now today, I guess when you watch wrestling shows, you will see the headliners against each other on a televised wrestling show. But back in the 80s, when the sport was sort of being revived, it would always be, you know, you say the Road Warriors versus two guys that, you know, that Bobby Heenan would refer to as ham and eggers. You know, they were just workers, you know. And there was a guy by the name of Ricky Ataki.
I remember that name.
And
Scary, isn't
that
it?
guy would take a beating that you wouldn't believe. And we were, you know, I would watch the show with friends. You know, we were into it.
I would think.
And
it was-
you know what? We firmly believe, though, that when the ham and eggers got out there, now obviously the guys pulled their shots, but we were of the firm belief that they didn't pull him quite as much with the ham and eggers. Sometimes you see a guy really look like he really got it laid on, and this guy Ataki, man, I'll tell you, he took some falls that were unbelievable. And he wasn't a real big guy, but he could fly a little bit. They'd hit him with the clothesline, and I mean, it looked real. I mean, either he was great at what he did and really made it look good, or it was half and half. Maybe they actually sort of hit him and he did the rest. But some really interesting stuff going on there. I find wrestling, seriously, I understand it's not a sport, but I just think the whole concept of the way they have to sell the sport is extremely interesting.
I think the way I find it interesting. Yes, they have to sell the sport, but you really think the way that they've planned those shows out, planned their matches out, choreographed their matches out. There's a lot of athletic talent.
Oh, great
athletes,
talent. Yeah,
definitely on that.
Definitely.
With the way their moves are scripted. And you know what? You fall the wrong way, you still can get hurt.
You know what's amazing too? I think even though I don't care if you're a good guy or bad guy, almost every wrestler portrays themselves as a Amit. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and that's the way that's the persona they have to give to the crowd because that generates interest. But what I find really interesting is I think that I don't know. There can't be too many exceptions. They're all ultimate team players because you look at a guy like Hulk Hogan, who you could sort of compare him to take any big star in the other sports where, you know what, we might want to get this guy a little crack, but you know what, really don't want to hurt, say, Michael Jordan or LeBron James because he's our meal ticket. We're all getting paid more because they're getting paid more. Well, Hulk Hogan would be similar to that guy in wrestling. But Hulk Hogan basically was not a very good wrestler, let's put it that way. So somebody else had to make him look good.
Somebody
in their
had
matches.
to make him look
they
good,
had to
right.
So almost everybody he wrestled had to carry the match because he basically only had a couple of moves that he actually was proficient at. And for all of the other stuff that you see guys do, he couldn't do it. I mean, he had that leg drop that he would finish you off with. He'd do the flex and all that, which has nothing to do with wrestling. But he basically had the leg drop, and that was about it. That's the way he'd finish you off.
The guy I love to watch, just because of his athletic skills, was Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, I never saw him too much, but I know that he was a very good
he
wrestler.
would fly.
Yeah.
He would fly.
Did you ever see this guy? Boy. He was Japanese, and he always wore this big, elaborate headgear. And he would come to the United States once in a while. And he was another guy who could fly. I'll tell you one thing, Jim. We went one time to the Old Horizon, and one of the guys with us was, anti-wrestling guy, but because all the guys went, and he was very skeptical. But that day they had a women's tag team championship match. And the one team was called I believe it was called the Jumping Bomb Angels. They were Japanese, and these girls were high flyers. I mean, the ladies give you a great show, but usually they're not off the top rope type of wrestlers. These girls, could they fly? And it was one of these matchups where they were wrestling two veterans, and so they had to carry the match, okay, because the two veterans were named performers. It could have been like the Fabulous Moolah.
I was just going to say, was one of them the Fabulous Moolah?
They were way past their prime.
Yeah.
But they were the big names, and these girls carried the whole match. And this guy that we went with said, man, they are fantastic, because they were going off the top rope and all this stuff. I had never really had seen women do that myself to any great extent. So it was they were very talented, and but you're right. I mean, you fall the wrong way, and you can be injured.
Yeah.
Boy, we're going all over the place.
We're really.
Are we going to talk about Rafael Nadal winning his ninth out of his last 10 French Opens or something?
I'm sorry you don't have anything on lacrosse after all this.
I'll tell you what we should. What we should do. We should have, maybe done a rugby segment or something.
I know. Well, let's just ask the question here right now. as Agri Sam posed in his article from a couple of weeks ago, what if the Bulls don't get Carmelo Anthony or Kevin Love? What's plan B?
That's a good question. And you know what? Right now, and I don't know why I say this, only I usually go with my gut, I don't think they're going to get either one of them.
I don't think so either. I don't think Carmelo Anthony is a fit
Right.
under Thibodeau.
Right. Well, did you hear, speaking of that, Jim, did you hear the latest rumor, though? I heard a rumor where I think the Timberwolves proposed sending Kevin Love to the Bulls for Thibodeau and like another player.
I heard that rumor.
Yeah. Now, you know what? That actually is an interesting thing. Because somebody said to me, well, would you go for that trade? And my initial gut reaction was, yes, I would.
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
Yes, I would.
So, you know, and there's been coaches that have actually been traded before, right? I mean, not often, but that's happened.
Sure, it's happened. I would go for that right away.
I think I would. The interesting thing is, though, players, obviously, that's part of their deal to be traded or possibly be traded. So that's something that's they're used to. Coaches obviously understand that eventually they'll be fired or let go in some way, shape, or form. But I wonder what Thibodeau or any coach's reaction is to say, "Hey, we're trading you," because then I wonder contractually.
Well,
what goes on there?
That rumor has to be put to rest now because Flip Saunders. Flip Wilson. Flip Wilson. Jeez.
They just hired him.
They
right?
just hired him.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's off the board right now.
Okay. Well, I'd be interested to see. And now, again, Kevin Love is not going to be a free agent this year, but the following year.
Right.
So the interesting thing on this is, if you trade him, it's got to be like a sign-and trade.
Right.
The other thing is he's not going to come cheap. So what do you trade him?
What do you trade? What's your commodities that you're going to send to him? Because you're going to have to match dollars too.
Yeah.
For salary cap purposes, you just can't trade. I'll send you Nazim Muhammad.
Yeah, right.
You
You
know.
can't do that.
You can't do something like that. Perimeter shooting is obviously going to be an issue that they need to address, and Tony Snell's showed some improvement. But
Who did? Oh, Tony Snell.
Tony
Okay.
Snell. It would be interesting with some of the draft picks that they're talking about that could be, well, they might be off the board. I'm thinking Doug McDermott, Nick Stauskas from Michigan, James Young from Kentucky, Gary Harris from Michigan State. They might be off the board by the time the Bulls pick at 16, but Rodney Hood from Duke is available. P.J. Hairston, who's in the D-League, could be available. You got some veteran free agents out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then Derrick Rose will hurt his knee again, and everything will be...
Oh. I at least, John, I don't know if we lost that tape on the way to the Broadcast Hall of Fame, but I do recall last summer saying Bulls fans will probably think I'm crazy and want to string me up, but I said then that was the time to get rid of Derrick Rose, and boy,
Should have done
it. Looks like that was it.
Should have done it. I had a good laugh here on something else here. The general manager of the Houston Rockets, Daryl Morey, decided to share some answers he got from players in pre-draft interviews.
Oh, jeez.
And he tweeted them out. He said, "We have a lull in draft interviews, so I will highlight some of the best answers I can remember from past NBA drafts. Which foot did you hurt? I've been telling people my right foot.
Okay.
Why do you like rebounding? I can't do anything without the ball, so when I don't have it, I have to go get it."
There you go.
There you go. Do you lead by example or verbally? I lead verbally, not by example. Did you have any issues with your coach? Coach and I did not see eye to eye. On what? Playing time. What else? He was shorter.
Ah, there you go. That's a good one.
Did you have any issues with your coach? He didn't like it when I took early shots. What about when they went in? Then he liked them.
Okay.
We'll sign off with the best answer of all time that I tweeted last year as well. Can you pass a drug test? Today?
Whoa! Oh God!
Oh, what do you know about the Rockets? Great team, great history. How about players? You caught me. I don't know anyone.
You know what, Jim? It's interesting. Al Shaw, who was our former superintendent at Ridgewood High School, used to say the definition of an insanity is locking yourself in a room with 25 16-year-olds for 45 minutes or an hour. But I think that maybe we could say, along with teachers who he was referring to, maybe we could throw NBA general managers into that mix.
Oh, got to.
Could you imagine? I wonder how many of these prospective draftees really, based on those answers, how many of them
Actually got
really
drafted.
think like these guys do? It's amazing.
It's-
It's scary.
it's
and this is
scary.
going to be. This is going to be your team.
Yeah. These are the LeBron James and Michael Jordans of the future.
Speaking of which, looks like the Heat are in the driver's seat,
I think so. Tied 1-1.
tied 1-1.
But I think they're in the driver's seat, especially coming back now with three games in Miami.
No, I think they're doing a
2-3.
2-2-1-1-1 again.
Did they go back to that?
Yeah.
I thought they were going to the 2-3-2.
I never liked the 2-3-2. I didn't think.
A lot of coaches complained about that.
Yeah, it was. Well, put it this way: if you happen to stumble,
it is. They have gone back to 2-2-1-1-1.
Now, here's my question for you, Jim. The one that I said I had for you before we went on the air: Jared Allen and Lamar Houston. Which is going to be the left end, and which is going to be the right defensive end? You know,
No,
because I was trying to.
I
I always
I'm-
thought that Jared Allen was on the left side. when
I
see
would.
him play.
My instinct would be to say he would be the left end.
But then when you think about it, wouldn't you want your better pass rusher, in effect, maybe coming from behind the quarterback, just to put that in his mind? Because, this way most quarterbacks would be facing your best pass rusher. So I thought maybe I've got it wrong. Maybe maybe Houston's the left end and Allen's the right end. But I wasn't sure. And knowing that you're a Bears guy and a pro football guy, I thought you might be able to enlighten.
I would have to. I'd have to. I'll research that. I'll get back to you.
Well, it's very important.
Speak-
What the heck? What kind of stupid picture you got there?
Speaking
what
of-
picture you got there, Jim?
That's Javier Baez. I thought since you brought up draft, I thought we'd talk baseball
Oh,
draft.
I thought you were going to say we're in John's studio, which is in his basement. You caught a draft.
Nah, well, I've been sick the last week and a half.
Okay.
I don't need to get sicker. What'd you think of the? Did you look in any depth on the amateur draft for either side of town?
I find it really funny that this guy that the Sox drafted, they think actually, I don't know if the sports writers, I don't know if they take him serious or not, that he actually might be up with the club
In September.
in September.
Yeah.
Now, you know what? I remember a guy, and I think you probably remember him too, that had electric stuff, and he was brought up. I don't think he even went to the minors.
David
was
Clyde.
David Clyde,
and he was a flop.
and he never. And that probably when you're an 18-year-old guy, and I think this guy's older, but you've been pitching against. And have you watched any college baseball at all?
little bit.
Little
bit.
When I see college baseball, it's fun to watch, but I'm not very overwhelmed by the hitters. So when you're getting college hitters out, that's one thing. Major league hitters, now I'm critical of Major League Baseball, but they're still major leaguers. That's a whole different ballgame. You're going to tell me that this guy's going to come up in September. Why? Because he's going to be successful? What's the reason for it? I don't get it. And at this point, he's a lefty. Am I correct?
Yeah.
I mean, the Sox have three quality left-handed pitchers in my estimation. So I don't know. What do we? And not that I would object to a fourth if I was a Soxer,
and they took in this draft. They took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 left-handed pitchers.
wow.
Now, it'll be interesting to see out of these 40 how many actually sign.
Yeah.
Well,
the thing that I found interesting, Jim, because I see we're getting fairly close to our time, but what I wanted to run by you here is that you had told me that the catcher that the Cubs drafted,
Schwarber.
There's two interesting things here. First, they're talking about making him a corner outfielder, which I think is really sort of funny. The other thing is you had said that they had drafted him, possibly looking at the moving him.
I wondered if he was just going to be a commodity somewhere down the road.
That was your thought. That's not.
And a couple of people kind of wondered that too. But you listen to Hoyer, and I listened to a podcast from the game of Hoyer, and they said they like his ability offensively. That's the reason they took him.
Mm-hmm.
At that point in time, they thought since the top three pitchers were really off the board.
Yeah.
At that point in time, although I think they could have taken, can't think of his first name. The last name is Nola, who was taken by the Phillies at number 7. I thought he would have been a good pick too.
Mm-hmm. Well, how can you tell? I mean, you're just going by what somebody else says.
Yeah.
I wonder, actually, the Major League Draft is. We were talking about this on the phone a couple days ago. There's like over 1,200 players taken.
There were 1,215 players taken in this draft.
1,215 players. It's the other thing is, I think we talked a little bit about this in pro football or pro basketball. You have, sort of a narrower field. Most of the guys are going to be college guys. I know they look at guys in Europe as well, but it's pretty much college guys. I think where you start to have such a discrepancy in success in the major leagues draft is you throw high school seniors into the mix along with guys who've gone through college, and it becomes a real crapshoot.
It does, because you're and I see a lot of them. A lot of the high school kids usually get drafted in the later rounds because in a lot of instances they've committed to college. They're not ready to do this. I mean, for the case of last year, just last year's draft, the Cubs drafted 40 players last year. 16 of them did not sign.
Okay.
8 of them were drafted out of high school.
Okay.
Well,
I was going to say the other thing. There's so many.
And it'll be curious to see on the list this year.
I was
what
thinking
happens.
After we talked about this, I'm thinking to myself, what would the other thing I don't like is the fact that there is a draft, because I started to think, Mickey Mantle was from a little town in Oklahoma where the competition could not have been super good, although I think he did play against men, because I think he might have played with his father's company team early on, so he had that experience. But if you're going to go just the way things are now, you would not be playing with a company team. You would not be playing against older people. So now you throw a guy like that, and I'm just using his name, against strictly high school competition. And, he would have done well. But now, as a scout, you're thinking, okay, how do I judge this? I mean, it's not a big talent pool that he's playing against, He hits the ball a long way. He's got a lot of skills. But how is he going to fit in a draft? How do we perceive him? And I think the other thing, the benefit, and I don't think that, say, a guy like Mickey Mantle or Willie Mays or any of those guys who played at an early age, 14, 15 years old, those guys were playing against grown men. Now, they might not have been major league caliber grown men, but that is a big, big hill to climb for a 15-year-old to be playing with men 30, okay? And it's an excellent experience, and you sort of hone your skills that way. But if you're strictly only going to play against guys your age, how do you judge that? Because you're not going to be playing against people who are going to give you a challenge. So I think the draft itself becomes real iffy, because there is not, how do you judge the talent that you're looking at? How do you draft a high school guy? He's
it
only
really-
playing against other high school guys.
I mean, it really is. And I started when I pulled the list of the 2013 Cub draft picks, and I was going to start to go through the list from last year's stats to look at who played and how significant their contributions were to the team. And I'd like to do that to both. I mean, at this point in time, I mean, just as I started, I mean, obviously Chris Bryant. Chris Bryant, when he got to Boise last year, hit 354. And there's a pitcher too that showed some signs that might be a possibility. Rob Zestrasny, that could be but I think it's going to be somebody I want to follow. Maybe it's something we have to take. Maybe what we should do. Maybe what I'll do is take the class of 2013, and we'll chart their progress and see for both sides of town. Here's one guy that wasn't signed last year, and I thought, what a great name. I'm sorry he didn't get signed. Daniel Ponce de Leon.
Oh, wow. Daniel Ponce de Leon. Okay.
He was unsigned. He came out of Houston. He was a right-handed pitcher. He was taken in the 14th round. He didn't sign. I hope somebody picked him up this year.
I got to say, I think I said it last year. I think you had asked me the question, who was going to be the first of these prospects to, I don't know how your question went, to come up or make an impact. And I felt at that point it was going to be Chris Bryant, and I still feel that way. And I know
think so, too.
he's doing, but I've
I don't know
thought
if
about that.
I don't know if he's going to be the first to come up, but I think he's going to be the first that's going to make a significant impact.
Well, that would be my guess.
Yeah.
And I think what it is, Jim, to me, is I think that the feeling I get about Chris Bryant is that he really has been schooled well in baseball. I think he understands the game. I think he's going to be more than just, obviously he's going to be a power hitter, but I think he's going to be more than that because I think he will be good in a lot of phases of the game. Whereas, not to say he's iffy, I hope he makes it as well, but Javi Baez is a talent, but I'm not sure that he's going to, I think he is not strictly a talent, but I don't know that he has the background or the coaching to back up his talent.
And I guess the question is how coachable is he, too? Because
Yeah.
maybe he had to achieve that this year because with the horrible start he got off to at AAA, that started to give some question as to what his abilities were, and he's turned it around somewhat. But I don't even think he's cracked the 250 mark right now. The other issue is Soler is hurt again, which is starting to become a trend. Albert Almora is not exactly hitting as great as he did in at Kane County. So I guess it's going to be a case of, they have the tools. How are they going to react at the major league level?
The last thing I would say, Jim, and I mentioned this to somebody, when you keep going, say, to the Dominican or Cuba, those are small countries, okay? Obviously, they've gotten really good players. I mean, they, meaning Major League Baseball, out of those countries. But how much can you continue to get out of them? There's only, you know what? It's all numbers. I mean, you have X amount of people in the country. You're going to have X amount of people who are going to be major league players or good, even good or average major league players. It's just a numbers game.
That's right.
And you can't keep going to that well expecting the same results because I don't think that's going to work.
Eventually, we run out of everything.
Yep.
Including time.
Including time, so.
John, wake up,
Thanks,
John. Hey, the music's come up.
All right.
He let us play longer today.
That's
I don't
right.
know what it was. Either he was fascinated by our conversation or he'd fallen asleep in there. I'm not sure.
I don't know which either.
He's nodding his head when I said falling asleep. So that was, okay. All right.
Thanks, John.
All right. Thanks again, John. Thanks again to John DeVita for everything he does for us. A lot of fun again. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. See ya.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John Navita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John Navita, edited by Stephen Lehman, audio engineer is James Rohde, and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network is Mr. John Shikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, June the 10th, the year 2014. Until next time, be safe, and thanks for listening.